Hello and welcome to my channel In Search of Wonder. My name is Anne and this is my April recap. I apologize for the car setting. This is where my life is at right now. I just don't have time at home. And I do have time while I am out and about in between different things. I did not have a staff meeting today, so I have a little extra time and I can actually film this. I was thinking I wouldn't have time to film my April recap until, I don't know, this weekend sometime, which was silly. But here we are, and we're gonna do this. Let's go. Pulling out my reading journals so I can remember what I read. Oh goodness. What did I read in April? First of all, generally speaking, April went far better than February or March in terms of reading. I read a total of 7 books, which is great. Normally 8 is about, like, if I have a goal, it's what I aim for. If I have a norm, it's at least 8 in a month. So I'm happy with 7, and especially considering that, like, Pride and Prejudice was a larger book. One of those was nonfiction, The Life and Diary of David Brainerd, which took a little bit longer to read. So I'm happy with that. 7 books, excellent. Speaking of, I did add another nonfiction to my list. I read The Life and Diary of David Brainerd together with Hope at Hopefully Books, and I've talked at length about that one. I did add another 5-star read to my list, which is nice. I don't have very many yet this year. Like, we're averaging 1 a month, which, you know, isn't terrible, but it's also not great. So this year has not been stellar in terms of reading. And I'm sorry, I feel like this video is like a strange angle, but sorry, I don't know how to fix it. Anyway, Pride and Prejudice was the 5-star read. Nobody is surprised by that. I also was able to mark off a book on my reread goals, which is Jack and Jill. I've not been doing well at all with that this year, but that's okay. And I did not mark anything off my 50 by 50 in April, which is fine. I am doing pretty well overall on my goal of reading from my shelf. So of the books I've read so far this year, more than half have been books that I own. Now, what I'm not sure is, technically they're supposed to be books that were already on my shelf prior to the month in which I read them. Like, I didn't buy them just to read for something particular that month. So I think I've not been 100% accurate with marking that, though. I think that there have been a couple of times when I marked it off that was from my shelf, but I actually had bought it just for at least once. That's happened. But at any rate, there's 17. I read 17, and I have not read 35 books yet this year, so that's definitely more than half. For the Reading the Classics challenge, the prompt for the month of April was to read a memoir. And so I counted The Life and Diary of David Brainerd for that, which was, as Hope and I were discussing with each other, it was more of a prayer journal than an actual journal recording of his life. So I'm not sure. I mean, it's a memoir of sorts. Maybe by the strictest definition doesn't go with that, but nobody's being strict around here. Least of all me. So anyways, I'm counting it for that. And as for the scavenger hunt items, I checked off a famous person because multiple famous people are mentioned in that book. Jonathan Edwards, for example, and George Whitfield, I think, and maybe 1 or 2 others. And then there was no work of art mentioned there unless you're talking about the Bible. And then war. There was a brief mention, not like a full-on war, but definitely a skirmish between the French and the Native Americans. So I counted that. Okay, I failed on Chantel's Read Your Shelf challenge. So I am going to have to make up for that in May because I do want to stay on top of all of these challenges. And for April, it was supposed to be flowers on the cover. And so I picked up The First Ladies for that one. But I ended up DNFing it and I didn't get super far in it, not enough for me to count it. So I am not counting that. I need to pick up another book with flowers on the cover, which shouldn't be too difficult, but yeah. There was another book. All the books with flowers on the covers are not working for me. There was another book I picked up and I ended up DNFing as well. Mr. Darcy's Daughters. There wasn't anything wrong with it per se. I just found it incredibly boring. So, yeah, DNF'd that one. And it had some flowers on the cover, so that was a fail. I'll keep trying. For Jane Reed's Christian Fiction Reading Challenge, the April prompt was to read a new to me author, and that was Angela Bell, and I read A Lady's Guide to Marvels and Misadventures together with Charlene, and we both really enjoyed that one. That was a fun read. For the Celebrating Jane Austen, I read Pride and Prejudice, and of course, I love Pride and Prejudice. Who wouldn't? And then for my map where I'm marking off the states that I have read, you know, where books have been set in those states, I was able to mark a couple more off. Namely, Rhode Island, not Rhode Island, I'm looking at the wrong one, Connecticut, New Jersey, and Delaware. All three, thanks to the Life and Diary of David Brainerd, because he was in all of those areas when he was ministering to the Native Americans, and he lived in Connecticut. He was from Connecticut. So I was able to cross all those off. I mean, I'm steadily plugging away through the states. I actually am doing better on that than I thought I would. Like every month I've been able to color one in, and I didn't think that would happen. And then as far as the world map, that's going much more like I thought it would. I was able to color in Scotland. What did I read that was set in Scotland in April? Oh yeah, I read The Widow and the Highlander by Martha Keyes. That was set in Scotland. And then Belgium. Trying to remember my European geography. Belgium. Oh yeah. A Lady's Guide to Marvels and Misadventures. Went all over the place. Belgium, Holland, the Netherlands, and I feel like there's one or two others in there. Germany. No, I'd already colored in Germany. That was already in another one. Where else did they go? They went to quite a few places and I colored them off, but now I can't remember. Basically, all the countries between France and Germany and Italy that border those three countries. So I need to figure that out, and I'll write it on the screen here. Oh my. Okay. And then I filled in for April, my favorite book of April. Okay, I'm gonna give you all a minute to guess, because you're never gonna guess. You're never gonna guess. What is my favorite book in April of the ones that I read? Of course, you haven't heard all of the ones that I've read, but you've already heard me mention this one. And that, of course, is Pride and Prejudice. So we've already got 2 Austen books in the running. So yeah, I think Austen's going to end up winning this year, and nobody's really surprised about that. Okay, so for the Spring into the Movies, I participated in that readathon by Katie at Paperbacks and Ponytails. And I don't know, I guess maybe I fudged a little bit on some of this. And also I got to thinking, I wasn't sure if they were all supposed to be Christian fiction or not. I couldn't remember, because not all of these are. And they're also not all fiction, but whatever. I marked them off. So for Miss Congeniality, it is supposed to be romantic suspense. And I ended up putting The Widow and the Highlander on there because it was historic romantic suspense. It's probably not what a lot of people think of as suspense, but there was definitely a mystery element, and there was definitely a suspenseful aspect to it. Like, the main character was in danger, and there was some information that they were trying to uncover. It was a mystery. There was some suspense, so I counted it for that. Even though it may not be shelved in that genre, I counted it for that. For You've Got Mail, it was supposed to be epistolary, so I counted The Life and Diary of David Brainerd. It's not fiction, but it is epistolary. It's his journals. And then Bambi, I believe that one was supposed to have an animal on the cover, and I also put The Widow and the Highlander for that because there was a horse on the cover, and a horse was part of the story. And then Big Fish was supposed to be 400 plus pages, and I put Pride and Prejudice for that. And that is a classic, so not Christian fiction if it was supposed to be, but anyway. Easter Parade, again, was supposed to have a hat on the cover, so I put The Widow and the Highlander because there was a hat. Someone was wearing a hat. Singing in the Rain, and that was where the character sings or plays an instrument, and in that one, the main character played a violin. And then Seven Brides for Seven Brothers was a family story. I counted A Lady's Guide to Marvels and Misadventure for that one because it's definitely about the girl's family and her struggles with coping with her family's eccentricities, shall we say, and definitely was a huge part of the story. Her grandfather and her relationship with her mother, all of that stuff came into play. Then I did not get The Secret Garden, which was supposed to be a flower in the title, and I wanted to read A Fall of Marigolds for that, but I just didn't have time, and I didn't get to that at all. So, a quick rundown of the books that I did read, and my brief thoughts and ratings for each one of them. So first of all, Jack and Jill, I finished. That was actually a holdover from March. I just finished it on April 1st. So that was good. I gave it 4 stars. It was a sentimental read, a nostalgic read from my childhood that I really enjoyed, and I enjoyed this reread. It's not my favorite book of all time, but it was enjoyable. And The Widow and the Highlander, I finished in the first week of April, and I just mentioned, you know, it's like a historical kind of romantic suspense in a way. It was a mystery. It wasn't amazing, but it wasn't terrible. I enjoyed the reading of it. I gave it 3 stars. And then I read A Prior Engagement. Finished that in the middle of April. That was by Elizabeth Mansfield. Gave it 2.5 stars. It was not a favorite. Do not recommend. It was a Regency romance. I think that Elizabeth Mansfield is not the Regency author for me. I think there are plenty of other authors who write Regency romances that are well written with engaging and consistent characters and plots that I can enjoy. This one, all of the ones that are by Elizabeth Mansfield, I've struggled with them. The characters have not been consistent at all. So it's like you don't really get to know them. They're not very realistic. You never know, like very unpredictable. And then the plots, like their romance is right, but every single time I've had issues with the romances that take place. So, you know, reading is supposed to be fun, and that's not fun. So I'm done with that. And then A Lady's Guide to Marvels and Misadventure, I gave that 4 stars. I really enjoyed that. It was whimsy, it was fun, and had a good time. Pride and Prejudice, this was my 3rd or 4th read of that one, and absolutely loved it, of course. And I just enjoyed it this time. I was not like trying to read deeply in it or closely at all. I was just enjoying the read, and I did. It was great. Then I followed it up with reading Unequal Affections by Lara Ormiston, which is a Pride and Prejudice retelling / variation. I gave it 3.5 stars. It was fun. Of the Pride and Prejudice retellings that I have read, it's definitely one of the best. And then The Life and Diary of David Brainerd, I finished at the end of April and enjoyed it. It was very challenging spiritually. Although, like I said, it was just really his prayer journal and his spiritual life. There wasn't much about his personal life. There wasn't much autobiographical detail. So I think I would have enjoyed more of that. But what was there, I did enjoy it. It was a little repetitive, but I got a lot out of it. I liked learning more about him and his inner spiritual life. I would like now to read more about his outer life, you know, to get a better sense of who he was and his ministry and what he accomplished there at that time. All right, and finally, I always like to reflect on what did I plan to do versus what I actually did and see how well those things stack up together. April, TBR. So, for reading the classics memoir, David Brainerd, check. I did that one. Read Your Shelf Flowers, uncheck. Did not do that one. Fail. Austen's 250th birthday, Pride and Prejudice, check. Christian fiction new to me author, Marvels and Misadventures, check. For People, April, I was participating by reading David Brainerd. I am not sure that it really fit with either of their prompts. I can't remember what the first prompt was, but I felt like that one went the best with that quote that they had, because they had 2 different quotes for the prompts. I feel like the David Brainerd book went better with the first prompt, but I don't remember what it was. Anyway, so I read a book for People April, and that was hosted by Roz Scallydandling Around the Books and Brian at Bookish Texan and Elizabeth at Bookhands Books. And I already mentioned The Spring Into the Movies. Now, the books I ended up writing down on there were not necessarily the ones I had planned. But I did fit all of the prompts except for one. So I'm going to call that a success. One thing that I didn't really do very well with was Books and Things. Katie had a TBR Clear Out readathon. And the first goal was to set a goal to read only owned books. And I think I succeeded in that. Let me just double check and make sure that's true. So, Jack and Jill, yes. The Widow and the Highlander, yes, I own it on Kindle. A Prior Engagement, yes, I own that. Okay, somebody's backing up into the spot in front of me. They almost backed up right into my car. A Lady's Guide to Marvels and Misadventures, yes. Pride and Prejudice, yes. Unequal Affections, yes, although again, I own it on Kindle. The Life and Diary of David Brainerd, yes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, yes. So all of them were books I owned, if you count the ones that I own on Kindle. Number 2 was I was supposed to read a book that had been on my TBR for a long time. And I had on there Keeper of Lost Things, which, yeah, has not been on my TBR for a long time. None of these had been on my TBR for a long time, so I failed on that one. On your TBR a short time, and I put the David Brainerd one, but several of these could actually fit for that. The Lady's Guide to Marvels and Misadventures, I mean, it's been on my TBR. I say if it's been a matter of months rather than years, then it's a short time, and that one has been more months rather than years that it's been on my TBR. And then the longest book on my TBR, which is Count of Monte Cristo, which I am still reading, but I counted that for that because I read a third of it in April. The shortest book on my TBR, and I didn't read anything for that. A book you fear you've lost interest in, and I didn't read that. And then a book you are very excited to get to, which was The Lady's Guide to Marvels and Misadventure, and I did read that. So a bit of a mixed bag, but mostly I am very pleased with how April went. I read books that I enjoyed, and I made progress on some goals overall, like reading The Count of Monte Cristo is a huge one, and rereading Jack and Jill was another big one. I need to do more rereads. I'm going to be crossing one off in May, hopefully. So anyway, I'm making baby steps towards goals. So overall, a success. Not a huge smashing success, but good success. So that was my reading in April. Let me know how your reading went in April. Did you meet all your goals? And whether or not you met your goals, did you enjoy what you read? Was it a profitable experience for you? That's the main thing, right? Whether or not you met any goals, did you benefit by your reading in some way, shape, or form in the month of April? Or was it a drudgery or a chore? I hope not, because that would be unpleasant. And so I will sign off now, and I will see you next time. Bye.